Welcome to the Legacy All-Stars podcast. We feature inspirational stories from people who dedicate themselves to helping others. Here is your host, Alan Pavlosky.
Welcome to the Legacy All-Stars podcast. I'm your host, Alan Pavlosky, and today we are featuring a special best of episode with clips from past interviews. Today's focus is building a life on your own terms, featuring clips from interviews of Greg Robeson, Adapia DeRico, Dr. Claudia Six, Stuart Greif, and Andy Elwood. I hope you enjoy the show.
This clip features Greg Robeson from an episode that originally aired on May 6th, 2025.
What inspired you to start Christian Wholesale Furniture, and what lessons did you learn from growing and eventually selling that company?
Well, what inspired me was I was doing nonprofit work. I was building youth programs at the time for kids, young adults, training, just for the most part, creating constructive things for kids to do to stay out of trouble. And sometimes that's, weenie roast, camp out, social stuff. Other times it was retreats and spiritual, hey, do you realize there's a God who loves you kind of a thing, and deeper stuff, Um, but church and nonprofit work, I was having, I was married, having kids, and there was a growing family in it that generally that sector doesn't keep up with a growing family. We've got 5 kiddos. And so I was looking for ways to diversify. And I had a friend who invited me to liquidate a hotel. It was one of those moments, opportunity came along, and it was a Marriott, and it was hundreds of pieces of furniture, and it was the first big 5-digit deal, that made this. It was an eye opener. I was like, look at how much money it took. A year and a half to liquidate all that inventory, but was the launching point to seeing the need that was out there, and that morphed into estate liquidation. I realized how much of a need there was for people when they're moving, all these different reasons to deal with their stuff, which is actually, it's funny that that's part of our current model with seniors. Um, and also people who couldn't afford retail. And it was this huge market for mid-century furniture because it's better made than a lot of the stuff that you pay a lot more for today. And that's how that rolled. It just grew and grew and grew. Yes, supply and demand. And one of the first lessons I learned is that your work is your signature. Be careful who you hire, your company as a brand. The way your business card ends up on a refrigerator is by the way you do business. It's not the bottom line. It's not because, someone got the best deal on a brand new mattress they've ever gotten, or whatever. It is the way your delivery guy installs the bed or whatever, It's the way the transaction is done. And you can fake that, you can fake integrity. You can do things like naturally, my mom taught me to make eye contact and be polite and say thank you and please. All these habits, you can kind of fake it when all your heart really cares about is margins. Like all you're chasing is profit. That you can do, but those businesses don't do as well. The businesses that have staying power and exponential growth, and this is what I learned with this first company, was businesses run by people who care about people. They care about the needs they see in the community, and then building a business around that need, and then following up after the sale to make sure that their business continues to meet that need. That's the difference makers in the business community, and any community. And that's one of my takeaways from building that company was, don't just hire anybody who can fix a problem, whatever that is. Keep my eyes on the customer, the needs that we're meeting, and how efficient and how much of a well-oiled machine is this company at the need in the person that we're serving. That was one of the key lessons from that first entrepreneurial venture.
This clip features Adapia DeRico from an episode that originally aired on August 19th, 2025.
Let's move right into what I think is going to relate to this subject. Let's talk about your book, Productive Intuition.
Yes.
It's resonated with so many. What does productive intuition mean to you, and how do you think leaders are seeking it out now more than ever?
Yeah, and it is because I talk about a lot of this in that book. And Productive Intuition to me is the book that I wrote where I encapsulated all these lessons that I learned over the years about waking up. So it's like it's a little bit bohemian, and it's a lot business. And it's really about, we are so intuitive, scientifically proven. From there's more brain cells in our guts than there is in our cerebral brain, to the
Mhm.
electromagnetic frequency of our heart, to all the way out to like clairvoyant or like clairsentient kind of abilities that we have and can activate. But productive intuition basically is like, listen, we all have intuition. We're all using it all the time. And if you listen closely to interviews with, like, even Gary Vee recently was telling somebody like, I use my intuition to pick the winner because I know how this works. We use it all the time, but it hasn't been in the lexicon, like in how we talk about business,
Mhm.
until recently. It's starting to come up a lot more. So you can be productive when you're not grinding. Like, there's the big difference, and we have to think about intuition as a different form of intelligence, and it shows up in different ways, and we can use it to be way more productive than if we were just trying to do it all only from the mind. And that's really
Mhm.
where that concept came from.
Yeah, great. You talk about the power of reconnecting with your inner authority. What does
Mhm.
that look like in practical terms for a founder or an executive?
Yeah, and I actually didn't answer your previous question of like how leaders can use it. And this is actually this, because intuition can maybe feel a little like that's not a good word for some people, and that's fine. You can call whatever you want, but essentially it's, there's an inner part of you that knows things that are far beyond what just the prefrontal cortex, like mental, even like your memory knows. Like, we are
Mhm.
so intelligent, so vastly intelligent. And to go back to my story about, when I was younger and I moved to Italy and I did all these things, like, that was me not listening to my inner authority that was saying, like, girl, like, this is not good for you. Like, you are not happy. This is not going well. You're,
Mhm.
um, won't even get into, some of the things that the body dysmorphia, just things that I did to try to like have control over something. And there was deep moments where I knew it was wrong. I knew I wasn't happy. I knew, but I would just push it down, push it down, push it down. And so transpose that into business. People all the time, especially founders, they're going off of instinct. They're going off of intuition a lot of times, and they're collecting information. And if they're not listening deeply to themselves and outsourcing their decisions to someone else or to the market or to, to whatever, they're giving away their greatest power.
Mhm.
Because when we get back to, who am I? What do I want? What do I desire? What is meaningful to me? How do I want to contribute? Like, those are the questions that you can like anchor into those. And then you go forward from there. Like, you center yourself in who you are, and you don't let that change. You don't let anyone change you. You can still operate around others, but instead of trying to please everyone, which is completely impossible, you come from a place of deep internal alignment and integrity, and your outputs and your outcomes, they're simply better because they're more authentic to you.
This clip features Dr. Claudia Six from an episode that originally aired on September 2nd, 2025.
Well, let me ask you a related question about younger parents with kids, and how do you help them balance their spousal relationship while also giving the best of themselves to their children?
There are some cultural issues that come up there. Because I'm French, it's like American parents don't tend to close their bedroom door. American parents don't tend to close their bedroom door. Kids have easy access to the parental bedroom and the parental space. So couples are telling me, like, well, we can't have sex until our kids are asleep, and they don't go to sleep till like 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, put your kids to bed earlier, close your bedroom door, tell them you're having mommy and daddy time, and unless the house is on fire or somebody's bleeding, to not come in the bedroom. Put a lock on your bedroom door. That's one of the first things I tell people. And I also tell them no TV in the bedroom because that's the death of sex. There's a payoff. When a couple has managed to not have sex for years on end and channel all their affective energy into their kids, there's a payoff. There's something they're avoiding. And my style is very direct in a very compassionate way. But I look at, like, what's the payoff? What's the payoff of not engaging your partner sexually? You don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to make the effort to get present. You can just zone out. Maybe there's stuff you don't want to talk about. Maybe you have a long laundry list of resentments that you've never brought up. And you can't just pretend that everything's fine and have sex with them when you've got this long laundry list of grievances that you don't want to bring up because you don't want to rock the boat. So it's easier to just kind of like keep things status quo. So yeah, I kind of confront people.
In your book, Erotic Integrity, you talk about being true to yourself sexually. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it starts with really knowing who you are as a sexual being. And so, for years people said, "Oh, your work is so interesting. You should write a book." And I was like, "Well, people have been having sex for a long time. I haven't invented anything. If I come up with something new, I'll write a book." And then I realized that I had this lens in my mind when working with clients, which was erotic integrity. And I often never even used those words. But one of the first things I'm doing, apart from all the stuff I've already told you about, because I'm working on multiple levels, is figuring out who somebody is as an erotic being. Because there's a lot of suffering that comes from people trying to be the way they think they're supposed to be. Hetero, vanilla, monogamous, missionary. But there's so much more variety to who people are. And so I try to unpack that with them. I mean, one simple example is, maybe somebody's bisexual and they just never really gave themselves permission. Maybe they had some bisexual experiences in college and then they thought, okay, well, that was fun, but that's not okay. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not even going to think about it. But actually, it's part of who they are. And so part of erotic integrity is understanding who you are, it's accepting who you are, and figuring out how you're going to have that fit into your life in a way that works. Maybe you're non-monogamous, or maybe you're a little dom and you just haven't really given yourself permission to be dominant. And so it's not always, crazy stuff. It's just sort of like subtleties in our sexuality that we haven't given ourselves permission for. So those are the 3 steps to erotic integrity.
This clip features Stuart Greif from an episode that originally aired on November 18th, 2025.
I want to move on to another important subject to you and I. We both have strong women in our lives.
Yeah.
You've been recognized globally for your allyship and support for women and inclusion. What does being an ally mean in practice to you?
Yeah. The first thing I'll say, too, in recognition and tip of the hat to your wife, Gail, and my wife, Jennifer, both incredibly accomplished. I'm in awe of my wife, and she's every bit a partner and equal. It doesn't mean everything's symmetrical or the same, and every relationship's different. But I know what Gail has accomplished. I hope at some point you can have her on too, if she hasn't been already. I know it might be, but you should, because she is inspirational as well. To me, it's being an ally and advocate. It's about more than mentoring. It's about, even when, or especially when, women aren't in the room, whether in the boardroom or other context, of making sure they have a voice, of advocating to bring them in so that they are in the room, speaking to their leadership and success, making sure there's equity with pay and promotions, ensuring that we recognize that, the reality, if we're intellectually honest, most of us, like the historical, and this isn't woke, this is just stepping out, just neutrally worded, that men have led business historically, and therefore it's going to bias to the things. Do we not think that if it was flipped, if all women had led businesses historically, not men in government, etc., that there'd be, fewer happy hours at a sports bar, and probably better balance of, policies around families and family need and having a kid, so that one doesn't have to choose stepping out versus pursuing a career without having it be a setback. And so I think the point is, until the data tells me different, and not just with women, with people of color, with different groups, LGBTQI, it doesn't matter. When you look at the data and say there are higher hurdles to capital, to opportunities, to promotion, it's not because women are kicking our asses. And I say this not to be provocative. in colleges. There's even concern for men now, but the women still have the glass ceiling, as do people of color and others. And so I think it was a woman who at Harvard at a commencement address said something to the effect that talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. There is no way, if I grew up in a small village, let's say in India, far away from the US and our system, or if I wasn't a white man, that I would have the same kind of access opportunities. And yes, not everybody starts out equal in life. But when you look at the data, for example, women drive 80% of the decisions in the travel industry when it comes to travel decisions. Yet they represent only 15% of the founders and only get about less than 3% of the capital from venture.
Yeah, they drive 90% in my household.
I was going to say it's probably 110. My wife and I are, we work together, but point taken.
Yeah.
This clip features Andy Elwood from an episode that originally aired on November 25th, 2025.
I've been dying to hear about Stretch in a little bit more granular detail. Tell us about Stretch, especially about pre-purchase intent, and what problem did you see in the marketplace that sparked the idea?
When you think about the innovations that happen, there are a lot of really good features that get built disguised as companies on the seller side of things. There's a lot of things that help companies sell more things to shoppers. And building any company is hard, but building a company where you know exactly who is going to buy this, and here's the thing on their P&L that you're going to change by 5 to 15% a year. There are amazing people building amazing companies that do that, but they're features inside of an existing system. Category defining companies that I really look up to, that I have been studying and thinking a lot about in my career, are companies that build an entirely new way of thinking about things. I'm inspired by companies like Zillow, who thought about the person buying the house as opposed to the person, the retailer selling the house. They said, hey, home purchaser doesn't have good information. They don't have everything that they need to know about this, except for what's being controlled by the person who's doing the sale. And obviously that's tainted information. Let's give them access to information. Let's have them be able to make those choices themselves. Expedia, same thing with travel. The purchasers were not necessarily saying colluding, but they were keeping a lot of information away from the traveler. And same thing with like AutoTrader and Cars.com, right? When people have information, it disrupts an industry, but it allows the industry to operate much more efficiently. It allows aligned interests in disclosure of information and things along those lines. The top 4 uses of household GDP, it's your home, it's your travel, it's your automotive, and it's groceries. Groceries hasn't really changed that much since the Roman Empire, if you really think about it. We all still go to a predetermined place, a marketplace, that has a bunch of stuff, and we hope that the guy at this stall is selling it to us at a fair price and that it's good quality. But we're not going to all the other stalls first, comparing and contrasting. Similarly, most Americans are within 5 miles of 10 to 12 different grocery stores. And they're not checking all the stores before they make their purchase. They're kind of just going to the one that is close by, or the one that they know the manager, the one that has good lighting in the parking lot. And so my question was, what would it look like to give shoppers the information so that before they left their house, they could know that turning left or turning right out of their driveway could save them 20 or 30%. So that's where I thought about that, was on the grocery list, right? Getting things started on a grocery list. There's 26 billion trips to the grocery store in America every year, and 90% of those have a grocery list of some kind. When you think about the amount of information that is being lost on the back of an envelope or a Post-it note or in an Apple Notes on your phone or a text from your spouse, all that information could be the power that the shoppers need in order to get better prices, have better selection, and actually even have some collective bargaining power if it was organized in a better way. And that's really what we're thinking about a lot with Stretch. To create a simple, beautiful, elegant, smart shopping list that if you tell me what's on your list this week, I'll tell you every store close by that carries it. And then eventually we'll build in online purchases as well. And it's not always about price. It's about having the perfect information to understand that, hey, today I've got a little bit of extra time, so I'll drive a little further to save $50.
I hope you enjoyed today's best of episode. I encourage all of you to build your legacy with intention. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new episodes. I'm Alan Pavlosky, signing off for Legacy All Stars.